Our final speaker is Larry Brown, who is the National Secretary-Treasurer of Canada's second largest union, the National Union of Public and General Employees. He's also President of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. He's co-chair of the Trade Justice Network, and he's been involved with the Work in the Warming World and the ACW for a number of years now. He's got extensive experience overseeing NUPGE's policy on environmental issues, and his remarks tonight we're going to focus on the international trade union movement and its involvement in climate change and environmental issues. So, Larry, it's all yours.
You folks are amazing, actually. I looked at the way the panel was organized and saw that I was going to be the last speaker, and I thought there'd be 3 of you left. So congratulations for your stamina. I would say to John, thanks for the introduction, but he pretty much had to say that. That's what I wrote for him. So, you missed the other 3 paragraphs. It's good to be here on a panel like this. I feel humbled, actually, to be with this group of people who know so much about the issue. I was asked to talk about international labor activism and environment and climate change. So, of course, what I'm going to do is talk about pensions and trade deals. And I'm going to try and make that a logical connection. First of all, on pensions, one of the things that people don't very often think about is that I'm told that pension plans, workers' pension income that's put aside in funds, is one of the 2 largest pools of available capital in the world. Now, I don't know how many trillions of dollars that is, and quite frankly, I don't even really understand $1 trillion. I know it's got a lot of zero. I don't really have any grasp of what that means in practice. But there's a whole bunch of trillions of dollars in workers' pension funds. And workers' pension funds are run sometimes by employers, and that we just have to, there's not much we can do about that. A lot of the times by jointly trusteed plans where we have equal numbers of trustees, and sometimes by unions themselves, in the building trades in particular. And when people are trustees of a pension plan, they have a legal obligation and a legal duty to make sure that the pension is payable. That's their first obligation, and they can't not do that. If they try to avoid that and say, well, that's not relevant, we're going to do good works, we're going to, sort of ride off in tilted windmills, they would be violating their legal obligation. But just fairly recently, I should tell you, I have to keep my jacket buttoned up because I decided for the first time that I can never remember to spill coffee all over myself before the panel started. So if I undid my jacket, you would see the evidence, so as uncomfortable as it is. Just recently, there's a group in BC called SHARE, the Shareholders Action for Research and Education, I think is what SHARE means. They came out with a new legal report that says in making investment decisions, climate change denial is not an option. Climate change risks must be taken into account, and pension trustees may protect the long-term interests of their beneficiaries by acting as effective public policy advocates for climate change regulation. Now, if you think about what I said just a minute ago, that the traditional job of trustees is basically to make sure that the pension fund is capable of paying pensions, this is remarkably radical information that says not only can trustees look at the impact of climate change on their investments, but they must. If they're going to live up to their obligations, they have to take account of that. And Murray Gold, who is a well-known lawyer in this field, left unchecked, our current climate path jeopardizes our ability to live on planet Earth. And he says, not surprisingly, having that conclusion, that therefore pension trustees have an obligation not to keep on investing their money in a dead-end path. And unfortunately, the word dead end may be altogether too accurate. There is an emerging set of legal principles that says we've got huge amounts of money in workers' pension funds, and we have an obligation not just to not invest in damage, but to actually calculate and bring into the inside of the pension plan what our money is being used for and whether or not we're causing environmental degradation. That is really a remarkable statement. And it's unchallengeable, because if you read the basis from it, there's no way that you could actually argue that that's wrong, that that's a wrong conclusion. In fact, our friends in the UK are ahead of us on this. Over the last couple of years, there has been an increasing demand from big unions in the UK to their pension plans, that those plans take account of climate action issues and incorporate them into the decisions of the pension fund. Now, there's a couple of examples around the world that are a little less energetic than that, but in Australia and in the Netherlands, there's been huge pension funds that have divested themselves of coal investments. Now, divestment is one of those things that if you think about it more than for a second, you know, the first issue is, well, that's good because we're on the side of the angels now because we're not investing in coal. But actually, divestment only means that you're leaving it somebody else to invest. And it may be better for us to keep our investments and actually vote them. To vote that we would make the companies that we invest in more environmentally conscious, rather than walk away and say, we're now doing the right thing because we're not investing anymore in coal. There's a couple of things that are going on in the environmental area with respect to pension funds that they sound better than they are in practice. There's a huge global investment statement on climate change that's being implemented around the world, and we've got the BC Government Service Employees Union, my union there, CalPERS out of California, the biggest pension plan in the world, the Oxford Pension Trust here in Ontario. They've all signed on to that, and far be it for me to be cynical, but so far that's like the UN, what is that, PRI? What's PRI stand for? Does anybody remember? Somebody must know. Anyway, it's the Principle of Responsible Investment. It came to me. And that's one of those things that is being used by companies around the world as a flag of convenience. There's companies all over the place that have signed on to the UN PRI, Principle of Responsible Investment, simply so that they can say they did. And unfortunately, some of the environmental action that we're seeing is the same thing. People are signing on to it so that they can hold it up and say, aren't we good now because we signed this document? But what it does indicate is that there is, I think, an emerging body of work in pension investment that if we can figure out a way to really make that practical and really make that a hard edge where pension funds are really awakened to their responsibility in this area, it could be huge. I'm not here to tell you that it is yet, but I think it's an opportunity for us to really make a difference. Now, I said pensions and trade deals. There's also been a couple of mentions about trade deals, but let me be fairly direct on this. Anybody that is aware of and concerned about environmental problems that isn't involved in fighting trade deals is missing the boat. Because trade deals these days are not about trade. They are about basically their international corporate constitutions. They are about limiting the ability of governments to govern corporations and corporate activity. And in most of the trade deals that you will find right now, for example, CETA is one. CETA is the European-Canada trade deal that's been signed but not ratified. We're going to stop it in Europe. But CETA has really good language about environmental protection. There are all sorts of things that can be talked about and all sorts of things that can be looked at, and there's requirements that people discuss environmental protection. And it reads really well, up until the time you get to the bottom line, which is, okay, so what if somebody is violating any part of the agreement? What do you do about it? And in that case, it's really very firm. Because under CETA, you can issue a very stern report. A very stern report. You missed the point. I guess it's a stern report. In any other section of CETA, if you violate the agreement, there's enforceable provisions. Punitive sanctions, fines, all sorts of things. Under the environmental section of CETA, there is no enforceability. It's interesting to me that the two areas of CETA that are not enforceable are labor rights and environmental protection. Now that's what we don't have. What we do have in all of these trade deals is this little thing Bruce referred to called ISDS. Now what sane person could be worried about something called ISDS? I mean, right? How can you even talk about it? What does that mean? ISDS is Investor-State Dispute Settlement, which means that under trade deals these days, that individual companies get the right to challenge the decisions of governments. And they get to challenge those decisions of governments even if they are environmentally sound decisions. Fracking in Quebec was challenged by an individual company that claimed that they lived in the U.S. They actually were a Canadian company. They had a piece of paper in one of the U.S. states that allowed them to come back and challenge our government. You can't challenge our government the way that an international corporation can under these trade deals. You can't do anything to challenge governments. You can go to the next election and vote them out of office. Companies have the right under these trade deals to challenge the decisions of our government and to get huge amounts of money for it. The Bilcon case that Bruce referred to, there was a quarry about to be built in the Digby Neck area of Nova Scotia. If you've ever been to it, it's beautiful. And it's a beautiful shoreline. And a company wanted to build a quarry. You can't exactly say that a quarry is going to be beautiful. It may be functional, but it's going to wreck the environment. And that's what the people of Digby Neck said. They said, bugger off. We like our environmental... sorry. They did say that, but it was kind of... It wasn't phrased quite that way, if you understand me. They said, no, we don't want a quarry here, thanks very much. We like our environment the way it is. Go away. And the company went away and came back under NAFTA and challenged the decision of the government, and they got huge amounts of damages. I don't remember how many millions of dollars they got, because the people of Digby Neck had the gall to say to a company that they couldn't invest and make a profit. Remember the case a few years ago, Quebec said you can't anymore use chemicals just to make your lawn greener? Because it's an environmental... What's that? Yes, thank you. And it was, so we're pouring all this stuff into the environment so that we can have green lawns. It just seems a little weird somehow. And Quebec said you can't do it, and a company challenged them and said under NAFTA, you can't prevent us from selling chemicals to make your lawns greener. So you've got ISDS, which is investor state, which means companies can challenge and do challenge all the time decisions of our governments if they're in environmental areas. And we have one more area that is going to be increasingly we've got to watch for, which is a little thing called regulatory coherence. Regulatory coherence. And, convergence as well, the different labels. What that means is that regulations under trade deals should look the same in both countries. Well, that means that we should have the same regulations as they do in Europe if we sign on to CETA. But it also means that we should have the same regulations that they do in Singapore or Brunei or all of the, 13 countries under the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So we should lower our regulations to a standard of countries that as citizens, we don't have any influence over. We're being told under these trade deals that we should lower our standards so that everybody's standards are the same so that these poor companies don't have to worry about living up to different rules in different countries. So regulatory convergence is going to be another part of what is going to limit our ability to control environmental degradation in the future. And one final thing about trade deals. It may come to us in a few years, I would hope it would be sooner, that there needs to be new rules and regulations against corporations and their sort of... I got 2 minutes left? Lots of time. And if we have signed on to trade deals, what we have signed on to is that in future there will be no new social programs introduced that are outside of the trade deal restriction, which basically means privatization. So in the future, if there's a new program that comes along that says we're going to control environmental degradation, and it's sort of a public service operation, we will not be able to put it into place because we've already said that we will never in the future be able to introduce new social programs if we signed on to CETA. It's called a negative list, but that's what it amounts to. We've given up our sovereignty in order for companies to be able to move back and forth between borders and make more profit, and yet we have governments that go to Paris or wherever the last one was before that and refuse to give away their sovereignty when it comes to defending the environment. In fact, they don't only refuse, in trade deals they give away their right to control the environment because they give away, every time they sign a new trade deal, they make the rights of corporations even stronger. So, unions are involved internationally. We've got wonderful fight developing in Europe to stop CETA from being signed. The Trans-Pacific Partnership I don't think is going to be signed because unions in many countries around the world are fighting it. Unions have got good policies internally. I would be pressing my luck if I started to talk about them, but basically, unions have the right, I think, to say their members cannot be the ones to pay the price for environmental changes, and there has to be protection, there has to be just transition programs put into place, and there is no reason that our governments can't afford to do that as we're changing to an environmentally friendly future. If that's done, the union movement will be a very powerful ally to the environmental movement. Absolutely, I guarantee it. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Larry, and I'm glad you raised the issue of trade agreements because it's close to my heart as well. In fact, I'd be very curious, and someone in the crowd may already know this, how many times has the term climate change actually been included in the new Trans-Pacific Partnership trade agreement? I don't know the answer, but I haven't heard that it's been there at all. Larry says the answer is 0. A brand new trade agreement and not a word about climate change.